Today we gather as a mercy community to celebrate our Mercy Day, to remember the Sisters of Mercy. We have a number of them with us today to remember the founding of their religious order. We think of Our Lady under the title of Mercy, the Mother of Mercy. And today we also celebrate the feast day of St. Matthew. In one sense you can think, oh, why are we celebrating Matthew in the midst of mercy? But Matthew's actually, he's the gospel writer who writes the gospel of mercy. It's within his gospel that we get the Beatitudes. Blessed are the merciful. And his life is one of experiencing the mercy of God. And so Matthew is very much an appropriate saint for us to think of when we think of mercy. His gospel from the very beginning to the very end keeps coming back to the concept of mercy. People come before Jesus and they ask for mercy. Here in our gospel, Jesus says, what I want is mercy, not sacrifice. You have people who come before Jesus, Lord, have mercy on me. So the concept of mercy is very close to St. Matthew. Mercy is about change. Mercy is about sin. And mercy is about following Jesus Christ. In our gospel today, we can notice these three things. Mercy is about change. When you see a person, when you see the concepts, the situation of a person, we should want the best for others. We should want the best for ourselves. We should want for the best for those who are sitting either side of us. But that sometimes requires change. Sometimes that's a very hard thing. Some people are afraid of change because part of that is to recognise where we've come from and a desire for where we're going to. In today's gospel, Jesus goes to the tax post, the customs post, as we're told in the gospel, and he sees Matthew there. Matthew was doing a profession which separated him from the Jewish people, from his own people. He would have been hated by his own people, by the Jewish people. He was working for the Roman Empire, and that was considered the very worst thing that you could do. And the fact that he was then taxing people and sometimes making a reasonable profit for himself by taxing his own people meant that he was hated. He was an outcast within his own community. And sometimes that can happen by the profession that we do, but sometimes that can happen by the circumstances of our lives. Sometimes we might have failed in something. Sometimes it can easily happen that sometimes people think, oh, well, that girl's hair is, oh, well, it's different to mine. So, or if you're a little bit like mine, I've got no hair at all, so someone's hair is always different to mine. And sometimes that can cause division. And sometimes it can be very petty, some of these things. But Jesus says he wants to bring about a change. That pettiness, that nastiness, that separation that happens, mercy is to say, we're going to bring a change. And change is hard. But that's part of what mercy is. And that's part of the story of the Sisters of Mercy. They don't leave people in their sickness, in their hurt, and in their disaster. They lift them up, they give them dignity, and they help them to walk the way of Jesus. And that's the story of Matthew, and that's the story of mercy. And so mercy is about a change. Mercy is also about recognising the fact that we are sick. I've come to call sinners, Jesus says in the gospel, in essence saying he comes to call the sick. And he says, those who are well do not need a doctor, but the sick do. We need a doctor. Sometimes people are afraid of going to the doctor because sometimes you go to the doctor, you get bad news. And then sometimes the doctor says you've got to change your life. You've got to follow a new path. And some people don't like doing that. Men sometimes are terrible about that. Sometimes women can delay these things as well. But we seek healing. And time again, the Sisters of Mercy and the way of mercy is to bring healing, both in a physical sense, through hospitals, nursing homes, through the care of those who are sick, but also through the care of those who might be spiritually sick. those who might have lost hope in their life. And that's been part of the story of the Sisters of Mercy right throughout their history, is helping others to experience mercy, to bring about a change and to walk a new path. And that's a good path. And that's what happens with Matthew. Matthew is brought from a time or a place of disaster. He's asked to change and he accepts that, and then he follows a new path. When you go to the doctor's going to probably diagnose what you've got. But for most people, the doctor will talk to you first. He'll ask you what your symptoms are. And that's what we need to do with ourselves. When we come to Mass, the Mass is an experience of mercy. We recognise the beginning of Mass, when we had the Lord have mercy, is that we've failed. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If we know we've failed, we can know we can change, and we can then accept the doctor's orders. And so the doctor asks us, what are your symptoms? What are you struggling with? What's your pain? The doctor hears that story and then helps us to change and gives us a new way, a new path. And that's what Jesus does as well. He says to Matthew, follow me. And that's time and time again what the Sisters of Mercy have done, is they've listened to people's stories. They've heard their pain, their destruction, their things that are within them, both physically or psychologically or spiritually, and then they walk with them to bring about healing. That's the path of mercy. Sometimes people have this idea that mercy is sort of this nice charity. Charity is part of that, but it's much deeper than that. Mercy is about helping people to change, and we do that by listening, by helping people to know they need change, and then we walk with them in bringing that healing. And that's the story of Matthew. That's the stories of the Sisters of Mercy, even until today. You might think, well, why did the Sisters of Mercy get involved in running a school then? Why are they involved in education? Because passing on mercy isn't just something that's sort of just happens. We need to share it. We need to form a community of mercy. And all of us need to help each other. When someone's got something wrong with them, we don't sort of just say, well, things are bad luck to you. A doctor doesn't say to you when you come to the doctor, well, I've got a pain in my stomach. And the doctor doesn't say, oh, that's okay, just accept the pain that you've got. That's who you are. No, the doctor says, I want to help you. We recognise you've got some problems and we want to help you to be better. And that's what we're desiring. That's what our first reading talked about today, that we have a vocation and a calling to be the best people we can be. And that's what God wants for us. That's what the Sisters of Mercy want for us. That's what the Sisters of Mercy was set up for, to help people to recognise the fact that they need to be the best. God wants us to be the best. I want you to be the best. Your principal wants you to be the best. Your teachers want you to be the best, as do your parents. So let's be the best we can be. And part of that's recognising the fact that we don't always get 100%. And that's okay. But we're seeking, we should be wanting to get 100%. And so when you don't get 100%, or when you're not getting 100% in life in general, when you're not winning with a huge result on the sports field every time you play, you go to your coach or your teacher and say, how can we do it better? How can I be better? How can we be more perfect? That's the story of Jesus. He doesn't leave Matthew isolated, disconnected from community. He says to Matthew, hey Matthew, it's time to change. It's time to recognise where you've been is not a good place. And I want you to be healed, and I want you to follow in my way. Recommit all of you today, the Sisters of Mercy, the teachers, the parents, the students who are here, and even Father Michael. Let's recommit to being Jesus. God wants us to be his presence in the world. How can we be Jesus? As we enter into our Eucharistic prayer and as we then come forward to receive communion today, recognise the fact that we're not perfect, that we need to change, and that we've got some doctor's orders. The doctor's orders are the orders of Jesus. Let's follow him. Let's listen to him, walk his way, and walk the way of mercy through helping others to bring physical, spiritual, and psychological healing and wellness to our world.